Hi, and welcome back. This is the third and final video in the series about how to teach English online from anywhere. In the first two videos, I aimed to answer a lot of the common questions and concerns that I received from would-be teachers. And if you're with me for this third video, then you're probably thinking that this is something that you might really be interested in doing. But likely you still have lots of questions like, how do you proceed? What do you do first? What do you do next? And so relax, I've got you covered. What we're going to do in this third video is go through in detail what's included in my course, which I have created based on 12 years of experience teaching English online. And I have to say, it really is very soup to nuts, A to Z, A to Z, and really gives you everything that you need so that you can be up and running and earning as an English teacher very soon. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. There's a lot to cover here, and most of the video here will be about the curriculum itself. There is a bit of preamble here about the size of the market out there. It's huge. If you do a little bit of Googling, you'll find that there are about 1.5 billion students of English around the world right now. So I think we can probably find you a dozen or so, whatever you need to fill your calendar. The market is just huge. As far as what you can make, we talked about that previously, but I really think that there just is no better side gig out there, right? If you want something to do at night, or perhaps you're retired, entering retirement, and you want some additional income to augment your retirement income, then I just can't think of anything better. And money aside, I just find this so very rewarding. I'm still teaching all these years later, in large part because I know that I'm helping students out there. I'm helping them to achieve their life goals, and that's a really good feeling. Also, being your own boss does not suck. It's really good. I worked in the corporate world for years, and I got to say, I would never go back. I just like working for myself. You'll see my tagline here. I hope it's not too sappy, but it is teach English, which of course is what you'll be doing, make money, which is why you're doing it, but then also change lives, because you really will. If you do the kind of teaching that I do, where your students stay with you often for years and years, you're with them long enough to see the impact of the classes and what you're teaching them on their lives. And again, that's just a super, super feeling. So there's a testimonial here. Oh, some of you may know that name, Lee Harrison. If you have read International Living, or more recently, Live and Invest Overseas, Lee has worked with both publications, so you may recognize his face and his name there. So let's go ahead and dive into the course curriculum here. There are 13 sections or modules. The first, as you would imagine, is just an introduction, a little about me, why I like teaching English online, and particularly how it stacks up against in-person teaching. I talked about that previously. I think if you want to skip over some things, you might skip over those, but I would encourage you to watch this video about jobs, requirements, and pay, which is intended to be kind of a high-level overview of the different types of jobs out there, what you need to teach each one, and how much you might make. And I included this bit about my approach to teaching because a lot of folks are really not sure where to go with this. It may seem a little bit overwhelming. So I like to talk a bit about what teaching looks like for me each week, each month. What is the cycle that I go through? And of course, you don't have to teach the same way that I do. You don't have to teach the same specialization that I do, which is business English. But this might give you some idea of what teaching English online could look like for you. And then just to reassure you, can you do this? I sincerely believe that if you are a native English speaker and a reasonably pleasant person and have a bit of gumption, as my grandma Kleitz would say, that you can be successful at this, particularly with this course, with my help behind you. In section 2, we dive into text setup, which I know is a concern for a lot of you, and I don't want to poo-poo it, but it needn't be. It really needn't be a concern. The technology is just so much better now than it was 12 years ago when I got started with this. The internet is faster and more stable around the world. The teleconferencing software that you'll be using is more full-featured and more stable. Interoperability is better. Just everything is better. But I realize that some of you will have still some fear of technology, maybe because you simply have not worked that much with it. So I'll talk about that. Before we get into the real techie stuff, I want to talk about your workspace and helping you to decide where you're going to teach and just some considerations there so that you can put your best foot forward with the students and deliver classes which are most conducive to learning. We'll talk about hardware that's needed. What you have is probably fine. You may want to get a headset, but you do not need that big old Cray computer down in your basement, right? We'll talk a bit about the internet. Now, again, these days, internet is not nearly such an issue as it used to be. It won't be on your end, but it is possible that if you have a student who lives on a hillside in Thailand or Colombia, that his or her internet may not be that great. And you do still run into issues. Typically, when you have issues in teaching classes, tech issues in teaching classes, it's not your computer. It's likely not your student's computer. And it's likely not the teleconferencing software that would be like Zoom or Skype or Google Meet. It's probably the internet on which this stuff sits. And so I do provide in the additional resources for this section a nice troubleshooting guide so you can go through and eliminate the common suspects, right? Teleconferencing programs, again, are like, well, the granddaddy is Skype, and Skype Personal is still around. Zoom really rose to prominence during the pandemic. They did heavy marketing, and perhaps they're the de facto standard today. I don't know, but I prefer myself Google Meet. So in this section, I'll kind of compare those. Those are the big three that you might be using, and any one of those will provide all of the functionality that you need for your classes. So if you're familiar with any of those, you're right on top of things, okay? Miscellaneous software and tools, not much more that you'll need, and you probably have what you need, but I'll just kind of quickly go through the things there that you want to be sure that you have. I'll answer the question of, do you need a website or YouTube channel? Short answer is no, at least not initially. I think that these could be rabbit holes to distract you from getting up and teaching, from focusing on what you really need to be focusing on. Later on down the road, if you want perhaps to create your own course and market it, you may want to have a YouTube channel, but certainly in the beginning, you needn't bother. And I'll talk about a good substitute for website in just a couple minutes. All right, so there'll be takeaway and to-do items for each section, and I encourage you to kind of keep up with those as you go. You'll do the course as you want to do the course. I understand that, but I encourage you to kind of keep on top of the exercises and assigned tasks as you go. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a stack of stuff to do, and you'll probably have to go back and watch some videos over to kind of refresh yourself on what you need. Now, on the other hand, I mean, you may want to just go through the whole course real quickly to get an overview of what's in it, and then go back through it more deliberately. That's up to you. So let's skip ahead to section 3, teaching prep, which is a bit of a hodgepodge. Some of these lessons will probably apply more to you, some may less. Tidying up your grammar. You're an English speaker, you're a native English speaker, and so you know grammar innately, but it's probably been a long time since you actually studied it. You may be really rusty on terms like, what is the present perfect tense anyway? And you'll be teaching that one, I promise you. So you'll probably want to go back and tidy up your grammar a little bit, and I give you some good textbooks in there. That's all you need. Just get yourself a good textbook, stay ahead of the student, and you'll be fine, all right? Tidying up your speech, the biggest thing here is slow down, particularly if you hail from the US. You probably speak too fast. Like the way I'm talking to you right now, I don't talk to students that way. I slow down and I talk to them like this in a calmer way. I make sure to put in plenty of pauses so that they can kind of catch up to me and understand exactly what I'm saying. I'm also very careful about word choice, not using terms or slang or idioms, expressions that they may not know. So that's what we will talk about in this section. Qualifications and certifications, I'll go back and review those, but again, really, if you're a native English speaker and you're personable, you have really just about everything that you need to succeed. Beyond that, you just need that gumption and stick-to-itiveness. Something that I really didn't address specifically is, do you need to speak another language, specifically your student's language? And when teachers ask me this, I always say, no, but it helps. So for example, I teach principally Brazilians, also Hispanics, and I have very good Portuguese these days and decent Spanish. And it really does help in teaching. Now, don't worry if all you speak is English. What I encourage you to do then is just select students who already have a sufficient level of English when they come to you, where you can communicate in English and they can understand you. But what I do encourage you to do, if you're working with students from a particular language background, say all of your students speak French or all of them speak Spanish, if that's part of your niche, then over time, it would behoove you to become somewhat conversant in that language, at least to be able to explain certain points in their language. I'm thinking vocabulary and also grammar. So for example, the word willing in English, those words are very difficult to explain in English without becoming circular. And so I explain to my Brazilians students who speak Portuguese, I just say, willing é com boa vontade, com vontade. And they go, oh, okay. It's just easier, right? And likewise, that present perfect tense that I mentioned a moment ago, I can explain how they would say it in Portuguese. And they go, oh, okay, now I get it. So with time, if you're teaching students who all have the same first language, you're going to definitely see patterns. Also with pronunciation, you'll see issues. So it really helps you to learn a little bit about their language, and you'll be a better teacher for it. It'll also make you more patient. If you're learning a language as your students are learning English, you'll just be a better teacher for it. Moving ahead, niches. Now, I talk so much in my course about niches because it underpins so many decisions that you'll make. And so I start talking about it here, and I'll talk about it again later when we talk about going solo. I'll give you some suggested teaching materials. I would suggest that you buy some upfront, like a good grammar book. There are other materials like prepared lessons that you may choose to delay purchasing until you have some income coming in. But anyway, I'll make recommendations there, and I use all of these, okay? So I won't recommend anything that I don't use and like myself. Now we get into some theory about language skills and learning styles, because learning a language, learning English, any language, is not one thing. It's a collection of related skills such as fluency, pronunciation, grammar, all of those things. And I think it's good for you to understand that. So as you begin working with students, you can kind of assess individual aspects of their speaking ability. Now, section 4 is working with online schools. Now, you already picked up, certainly if you watched the first 2 videos, the fact that I'm really biased toward teaching independently. When I first started teaching out, I did work through schools. I know what it's like working through schools, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm biased toward working independently. I just think it's overall better. Having said that, a lot of teachers do want to work with schools, at least initially. And I understand it because they want to focus on the teaching and getting grounded. And if you work through a school, there are decisions you won't have to make, such as what materials to use. Those are going to be provided to you, and you're going to teach this in this way. and so on, and they'll find students for you. That's a big bugaboo for a lot of new teachers. So I do include a section on that, focusing on what does the schools actually do. How do you apply to schools? To give you some idea of what to expect there. But in sections 5 and 6, I talk about going solo. Now, in version 1 of my course, this was all one module, and it just got so big, I've split it out into 2. So in section 5, we talk about the basics. Why would you want to go independent? The advantages of it, deciding on a niche. So if you're teaching through a school, the niche is kind of decided. So let's say you apply with, you get on with VIP Kid. Well, your niche is defined already because they teach kids in China. That is their niche, right? On the other hand, if you want to go independent, you've got options. And that's good, but it does require making some decisions, right? And you need to decide what your niche is going to be. It's really very important in determining where you're going to look for your students, what materials you'll need, how much you can charge, and so on. Now, I want to make clear that you can change your niche. You can change your direction later on. It's not like you're going to be wedded to this forever, but you do want to have some kind of plan going in. Remember that picture of Yogi Berra? And if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. Well, that's what we're talking about here. Now, a big part, probably next to niches, the other really important lesson in this section here is about pricing and policy. So once you know what your niche is going to be, you need to start thinking about how much you're going to charge for your services, and well, how do you know how to do that? So I'll give you some ideas on how you can determine a fair market price. And I'll also talk about policies. Now, policies are principally about how are you going to get paid, and by what date, and so forth. And then also, very importantly, cancellations and reschedules, right? This is going to be a business for you, and you want to protect yourself. Cancellations and reschedules are a part of the game. They will happen because your students have jobs and families, they have other commitments. And so you just need to set up some reasonable policies. So what I do is I provide you mine as a template, and you can modify those to use yourself. Section 6 is the largest section in the entire course, and it's about finding students. I want to go through about the first half of these, because likely if you work, say, 3 of these at the top of the list, you won't need to do any of the others, right? And I've tried to actually put the ones I think are best, the simplest ones, at the top. So let's start with those you know. You're going to be teaching online, but that doesn't mean you have to limit looking for students to online. Now, there are many ways to find students online. We're going to talk about some of those, but that doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to looking for students online. Start with those you know. So let's say perhaps you live in Houston. I like Houston because it's a big multicultural city. And let's say that you are Hispanic in your background, or at least you know some Spanish. Well, talk to Latinos that you know and ask them, do you know anybody who might want to study English with me? And they could be recent arrivals, or they might be family back home in Mexico or Colombia or wherever, right? So start with those that you know. That might be a surprisingly easy way to find your first students. There's no cost to you in doing this, for one thing, and also if you and a prospective student know somebody in common, that kind of naturally gives you an in, doesn't it? All right. Now, similar to that, let's talk about on-the-ground promotion. So let's say, again, that you live in Houston, lots of Hispanics there, and that's going to be your niche. Well, what if you printed up some flyers and business cards, very cheap, very low-tech, but very effective, and then you went into some of the Latino neighborhoods and you asked the owners at bodegas, hey, can I put some cards here? At the markets, you stick some flyers up there. these can be surprisingly effective. When I first started teaching English in Brazil, I was teaching through schools, but I quickly decided, no, 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 I want to be independent. And how I found my own students, private students, was to do just this. I created flyers and business cards, and I freely distributed those business cards. You know, the little old lady on the elevator might not be a good prospect for you, but her son, the lawyer, might be. You know, you just don't know. And again, I ended up getting emails and texts from people, and we never did figure out how my card ended up in their hand, but it really didn't matter. I got lots of students that way. So low tech can work, on the ground promotion can work, and you might find students right there again in your area, which makes a lot of things such as payments easier and cheaper, right? Facebook, people will tell you Facebook is dead. Don't believe it. Facebook first can be a source of a lot of good information. So let's say you're trying to determine how much to price yourself. A Facebook group might help you. There are Facebook groups for teachers almost anywhere. So there, I think I may have used this example already, but there's an English teachers in Toulouse, France. It's that granular. There's a group for them, and you can get an idea of, you know, what they charge. You know, how much are people getting for classes. There are also a lot of Facebook pages out there for learners of English, where people will post their questions. You know, do I use the infinitive, or do I use the ing form, and so on. And if you go on to those pages and answer some questions, you might be able to pull a student or two from there, right? You answer some questions, and maybe you take them off into a private conversation. So Facebook can be good. Also, Facebook can serve as a website. Remember, I said I wouldn't fool with getting a YouTube channel or a website, at least not initially. And you really don't need to, because if you set up a Facebook page, it will really do essentially everything that a website would do for you, and for free, right? And you don't have to get the domain and the hosting and the SSL certificate, and you don't have to worry about getting hacked and all that kind of crap. Facebook pages are really nice. So this is one of the first things I would encourage you to do, is create a Facebook page. And if you don't know how to do it, you know, there are lots of good tutorials on that. Actually, the ones on YouTube are better than Facebook's own tutorials. But grab yourself a 16-year-old off the street, and he'll be able to help you set up a Facebook page. Now, once you have a Facebook page set up, then you can take that link and put it on your flyers. You can put it on your business cards, right? So you don't have to squeeze all the information on a little business card. You just put the basics and then your Facebook page, and people can go find your Facebook page, see a picture of you, learn about your specialization, your niche, your background, what you charge. You can offer specials there, you know, sign up by the end of this month, get 10 lessons for the price of 8, things like that. So I really, really encourage you to look at that. And if you want to get a little bit more sophisticated, you can run Facebook ads. And that's really not as intimidating as you might think. I mean, you can get really sophisticated with Facebook ads, but once you've got a Facebook page of your own, let's say you're doing some posts there to kind of demonstrate your knowledge in English, answer some basic questions, you know, that learners of English might have, you know, kind of demonstrate your knowledge. Well, if you have a post that gets a lot of engagement, by which I mean likes, comments, shares, like that, you can turn that post into a Facebook ad pretty easily. And that could be a really good way to prime the pump and get your first students. And as I think I've said before, and I will definitely say again, you know, you get those first few students, you teach them well, I'll show you how, they will take over and do your marketing for you. They really will. They will send referrals to you. I mean, for example, I just don't look for students anymore. And last Friday, I got a WhatsApp message from Rodolfo, who's a former student of mine. And then he said he has a friend, Arnaldo, who's going to be traveling and would like to up his English a bit. Would it be okay to give my information over to Arnaldo? And I said, oh, sure. So I heard from him the next day, Saturday, and we set up a chat, an assessment chat, which I'll talk about in a minute, for Wednesday, which was yesterday, and we have our first class next week. This is the way that it will work Okay, it works for me that way. It will work for you. You got to give it a little time. You have to prime the pump. You've got to get your first students. But honestly, think about it. Even if you want to do this as kind of a heavy gig, maybe you want to teach 22, 23 hours a week. How many students do you need to do that? I don't know, a dozen, 15, some once a week, some twice a week. Well, really get yourself your first handful of students, first 4 or 5 students, teach them well, they'll take over, right? And soon you'll have those 15 students that you need. I don't want to make it sound like there's no work involved. There is, but it's front end loaded. And once you're established, then it's really not that difficult. So don't be too afraid of this. Matchmaker sites are good also for starting out. Now, what is a matchmaker site? They're kind of like dating sites in that you, as a teacher, go out there and post a profile. The big names, if you want to go check some out, would be italki, ITALKI, Verbal Planet, Verbling, and they're different from schools. What they do is just allow you to set up your own profile. You determine your niche, you determine your price and the materials that you're going to use, and any special programs you have. So you have a lot more latitude for this service, or matching you up with the students, and they'll also take the payment, process that, and then give the payment to you after classes are delivered. They will charge typically between 15 and 30%. So it's not a nit, but it's less than the 50% that schools typically take. That's pretty much the standard for schools. If a student were paying $40 per class, you'll get 20. If you're lucky, that's actually a pretty good rate. With matchmaker sites, you set the price, but I think this is a good way to go. There's a cost, obviously, there of doing business, but it can be a good way to get started. So you'll kind of get your information together, post your little CV there, and you'll want to create a short video of a minute 15 seconds. And in the video, don't duplicate the stuff that you put in text. I would try to showcase my personality in the video and how you can help the student, and try and be that sort of person that the student would want to work with. All right. Now, similar to matchmaker sites are freelancer sites like Upwork or freelance.com. There's another big one I can't think of right now. But now these sites principally are where you would go to look for like temporary tech support or website design, that kind of stuff. But you will find some teachers out there, including English teachers, and they show stats on these sites, like their lifetime earnings and all that kind of stuff. And some of the teachers seem to do pretty well. I think that one of the advantages is that while most people going to these sites like Upwork are not looking for English teachers, if they are looking for an English teacher, you're going to stand out more. Okay, if you go to italki, there are lots of English teachers out there, right? But if you go to Upwork, they're not going to be as many, and so you might get noticed more easily. Also, there are classified ads like Craigslist and OLX, and don't poo-poo these, because a lot of people do check these ads, and they're free. They're absolutely free. Now, a couple of things: you'll only be able to post very short ads. They may just be a couple of lines. So you need to kind of think about that and have a punchy ad. And again, why don't you have your Facebook page URL in the ad, for more, does your accent in English suck? I can help you. And, you would say that, but something very short, sweet, pithy, and then a link to your Facebook page. Now, I'm not going to go into details on the other stuff, because I don't think that a YouTube channel, ads, website are things that you need to worry about initially. Blogging too, guest blogging, they're passive. You put stuff out there and you hope that people are going to find it and get interested and contact you. Whereas I think that flyers, cards, these are more direct ads. So I would encourage you to look at doing those. Just returning a minute here to word of mouth. So we were talking about people go through people that Word of mouth is just so very important. I think if you ask any small business owner, whether it be an accountant or a plumber, anybody, they will tell you that word of mouth is the best form of advertising. And first, it's free, which is great. But the other big component is that people come to you, prospective students, prospective clients come to you predisposed to want to sign up with you. You know, if there's a student out there, and there are always tons of people who are thinking about taking English classes, planning to return to English classes for various reasons, then if they talk to somebody who knows you and knows that you offer English classes and mentions you, think about it. They're much more inclined to want to talk to you and probably sign up with you than some English teacher who's a complete unknown to them, right? Doesn't that make sense? I mean, this is the way that it works. I often compare looking for a new English teacher to like moving to a new town and having to look for a new doctor. It's on your list of stuff to do, you know, you need to do it, but who likes to do that? Well, for the student out there, don't think that shopping for an English teacher is a pleasant activity. It's something they know they need to do, but they're apprehensive about it. They know that they're going to be evaluated, they're going to be judged. And so if your name is presented to them by a mutual acquaintance, then that just tips the scale so much in your favor. Okay. Now, the final thing I want to say is, if you remember the end of video 2, I said one of the big places where would-be teachers, new teachers fall down is they just fail to market themselves in any kind of a meaningful fashion. So I think what you need to do up front, and I will help you with this, right, is to look at these first half dozen ways of marketing yourself that we've looked at and choose maybe 3 that you think you could do and you would be comfortable doing, or at least that you could make yourself do, right? Put them into a written plan, because if it's not written, it's not a plan, right? And it should include some dates and some numbers, like I'm going to get this many flyers printed up and I'm going to distribute this many flyers each week, or this many business cards each week, and so on. And it's not complicated, really. You just need to make yourself do it. I think it was Coach Vince Lombardi who said, plan your work and work your plan. I'm not sure if it was Lombardi, but whoever said it was brilliant, okay? It's not rocket science. You just have to make yourself do it. Let's move on now and talk about the assessment chat, which I've mentioned. So what is that? It's very much what it sounds like. You're assessing a prospective student, and I like the word chat rather than like interview or something else like that, because it's friendly, right? It's light. But the assessment chat is a chat that I hold with prospects before I accept them as students. It's always free. It's worth giving away. You'll see why in a minute. And it's typically, I don't know, around a half an hour. Okay, but time well spent. I had a chat yesterday with Arnaldo, and what did I do in that half an hour? Well, the first thing is I just want to establish that the internet connection is going to be okay, and the student is savvy enough to get on a call with me. That's typically not an issue these days. Then I'm going to, of course, listen to the student. How is his grammar? How is his fluency? What's his accent like? And I keep notes on all this. I have a form that I use, and it's in there as a resource. So you can use the same form that I use and make notes about that. I'll ask about the student's history, you know, where they've studied, because I've been around long enough. I know based on the school that they attended, whether it was Brazos or Cultura Inglesa, you know, whether they're stronger in conversation, they're stronger in grammar. But you try and find out about a little bit about that. But what you really want to do, what I like to do right up in front is say, well, tell me, Arnaldo, why are you wanting to return to English classes now? You know, what's happening in your life? Then I just sit back and listen. And you get a lot of information there because you'll find out, you know, what their specific goals are, any deadlines that there might be. You know, sometimes a student just says, well, I just want to maintain the English that I have, but it could be that he's looking for a new job, or it could be that she wants to apply for an observership in Toronto, or it could be any number of things. But the student's going to tell you what the drivers are. And that's going to be very helpful to you. And of course, while the student's talking, you're listening for things like fluency, pronunciation, and so on. But I think one of the reasons that the assessment chat is so very effective in closing business, I mean, it's close to 100%. If somebody comes to me and we do an assessment chat, almost well north of 90% of them will become students. Now, I have to say that they're almost all referrals too. So first they're referrals, and then they come to me and we have the assessment chat. But why the assessment chat is so effective in closing business is I'm listening to the student and what her needs are. Let's contrast this for a minute to what happens on those marketplace sites, those matchmaker sites like italki that I was talking about. The way that teachers typically try to lure in new students on those sites is they'll say, sign up for your free class today, or sign up for a free mini class today. Well, that's fine. Everybody likes something free. I like free stuff too. I'm sure you do. But think about it. Let's say a student is perusing italki looking for an English teacher, and a teacher says, hey, here's a free class. Well, the teacher doesn't know anything about the student, right? He doesn't know what her current level is, what her history is, and he certainly doesn't know what her goals are, her objectives. So any class that free class that he might be offering there is going to be, by definition, a one-size-fits-all kind of class. And we all know about one-size-fits-all, right? One-size-fits-all never does, right? Doesn't fit anybody. So contrast that to the assessment chat, which is all about her and what she needs. This is really great. It's also a wonderful opportunity for you to begin to establish that relationship with the student, the rapport that's so important, right? You know, put on your Marcus Welby hat, you know, your stethoscope or what, you know, whatever, and start building that rapport. And I promise you, this will do wonders. You'll really close a lot of business. Now, the other thing that's nice is when you do close business, the information that you've collected during that half hour then becomes the basis for your lesson plans for the first couple of months. And you can then target like specific pronunciation issues, you know, right off. And so within just several weeks, the student's going to see progress, right, in her areas of need and concern. It's great. I don't remember when I started doing the assessment chat, frankly, but I've been doing it forever. And I can never imagine being an independent teacher and not doing this. It's, as I say, a half an hour really well spent. Okay. The only other thing I'd like to add there is you'll notice there's something about formal assessment tests. So if one of the things that your student specifically wants is to improve his or her grammar, there's some free online tests, which I list there, which you can have the student take, and then you can get the score sent to you. So that's really good. We'll move on here. Section 8, scheduling, is easy in the beginning, but as you add students, it can become a little bit more difficult. So I just give you some tips in there. Lesson planning. I think it goes without saying that good lessons begin with good lesson plans, right? Doesn't that make sense? It's sort of the old, what is it, the law of the 6 Ps, whatever it is, prior, proper planning. There are a couple ways you can go about it, but you want to establish a routine. And what I like to do is, and I've tried a couple ways, but I like batch planning. So I'll do all of my lesson plans on Friday morning. And this works well for me. It also works well for the students because I'll send out the lesson plans for the next week, and they have the weekend at least to review that before their classes. And so they like that. It's regular, and they know when to look for the email from me. But you know, there have been times where my calendar was so full, and I was maybe teaching some classes on Friday too, where I tried doing a little bit each day. At the end of the day, kind of at least not sending out the materials or the emails perhaps for the next week, but at least kind of planning out what we were going to do while everything was still fresh. So you can do either way. I will say this, whatever you decide to do, the thing that you can do that will help you the most is take notes during those lessons, because you'll be surprised 2 days later you've forgotten what it was that you were going to cover for the next week, right? All right. Section 10, I have to say, outside of class, this is kind of, again, a collection, a hodgepodge of things, and I really couldn't decide what to name it. So if after going through the section, you want to suggest a name, please, by all means. We'll talk again about language as a collection of skills. I wanted to put that in here again because I just wanted to remind you as you begin teaching classes that you're going to be assessing different individual skill sets. Developing your soft skills, you want to be Marcus Welby, put on your stethoscope. This is just so very important. Put yourself in the student's place. If you, as a new teacher, as a native speaker, are nervous, how do you think the student feels? So do everything that you can to make the student relax. We all learn better when we're relaxed. We don't learn well when we're tense, right? So do what you can there. You want to establish a typical flow here. Remember the cheeseburger that I showed in one of the previous videos? You'll start with conversation, you'll finish with conversation. So depending on the kind of niche that you do, the materials that you use, you should develop a flow so that the student kind of knows how the classes are going to flow. Now, I want to talk at some length here about pacing. So this is how fast or slow you go in the class. And when I first started teaching, I was not a natural. One of the places where I was weak was in pacing. So if I did a lesson plan and there were 3 materials on it, we were going to do those 3 materials in the class. And what that could mean sometimes is that I was pushing the student. I was forcing the student, trying to get through all 3 of those materials. And you just don't want to do that. You want to learn to read the student, and is the student getting what you're saying or not? And stop periodically and ask questions, and don't just ask, did you understand that? Because nobody wants to appear stupid, right? So of course he's going to say yes. You want to ask some leading questions, kind of probing questions. But look, if you have 3 materials on the lesson plan and you only do 2, that's fine. You go at a pace that allows the student to absorb the information. And if there's one material that you didn't get to, hey, roll it forward to the next class. Your lesson planning just became that much easier, right? So pacing is a bit of an art form, but I'll give you some tips for how to keep the class moving along at the right pace. Contact outside of class. If you're teaching kids, if you're teaching teens, you probably won't have a lot of that. But I actually encourage my students, who are all adults, to contact me outside of class if they need something. For example, I have a couple who write a lot of emails in their jobs, and sometimes, they have to send out an important email and we don't have class for a few days. I say, send it over to me and I can quickly review it, suggest any changes that might be necessary, and then they can get out that important email. And they really appreciate this. It doesn't cost me much time at all. Also, sometimes I might see an article that I think the student would enjoy. I just with Fernanda within the last week here, I saw an article on sustainability. I sent her the URL through WhatsApp, and that was our next lesson. She wanted to read it. You'll have to decide how much you want to do this. And, if you get really busy, it may be tough to do, but something to think about. All right. Now, sections 11 and 12 are the real guts of teaching, if you will. And this is a big section, so I divided it into the 2. Under basic, kind of think about the different skills sets that a student might want to improve. So listening comprehension, this is a basis for so many other things, because if the student's not really understanding what you're saying, your instructions, obviously, that's something that has to be tackled first, right? Improving fluency, I'll give you some tips for doing that. Some tips for teaching grammar that will make that a little bit easier. And relax, as you can see, teaching English is not all about teaching grammar, but it's going to be a part of what you're going to do. And so I'll give you some tips for doing that more effectively. Teaching pronunciation, as I've said before, this along with fluency are probably the 2 things that students really want. So I gave you some tips there. And one is, you're keeping track of the students' pronunciation problems. So let's say there are 5 or 6 that you've identified. Don't try and tackle all of them right at the beginning, because you'll be interrupting the student all the time, and it can, there's no, she can't get any fluency, and she might become frustrated and think, oh, I'm helpless, and so on. So prioritize and knock out one, no more than two. Try to focus on one at a time. So kill one and then go on to the next one, like the Hydra, right? Beat its head into the ground and then singe it, and then move on to the next one, right? Teaching pronunciations, I'll give you some tips about that. Students pick up pronunciation, of course, just through casual conversation, certainly through reading articles, which we'll talk about in a moment, but you may have some classes devoted specifically to building vocabulary, often around the students' work or other interests. Now, teaching English in text is not so much a skill as a method of addressing a lot of skills at one time. I really like using articles in class. I talked about this in one of the previous videos because it's just a way to exercise so many skills at once, and it can be really enjoyable because the articles can be about just about anything. And then learning through conversation. Students want to improve their fluency. The way you do that is through conversation. I would just say that I don't like to be too casual, though, about the conversations. I like to have a topic or a theme to wrap the conversation around, because otherwise you run the risk of the conversation stalling, and that's just awkward. All right, more advanced teaching methods. You'll be teaching phrasal verbs. Now, phrasal verbs, in case you don't know, are 2 or sometimes 3 word verbs. We have a verb and followed by a preposition or an adverb, or perhaps both, like get in, get on, get out of, get around, get onto, okay, like that. And not all languages have those, but English has lots of them. They're peppered all through language, and they're not just slang. They're informal English. We don't typically use them a lot in business or business writing, certainly, but we use them all the time in conversation. Don't we say come in rather than enter, or go in rather than enter? I don't know why, but English just loves phrasal verbs, and they've been around since at least Shakespeare's time. You can find phrasal verbs in Shakespeare's plays. So you do need to be teaching these to students, and younger students tend to like phrasal verbs, I think, because that makes them sound more like natives and they grasp them easier. The older students may not like them as much. They may get frustrated trying to learn them, but it's something that you should be teaching, so I talk about that. Teaching with video is fun. You can watch short videos together in class and then discuss them. I find students like recipe videos. They're a lot, everyone likes to eat, right? So they're a lot of fun. One of the favorite ones we had was chocolate brownies, a recipe for making chocolate brownies. Longer videos you can assign as homework and then discuss them in the next class. So let's say you and your student are both watching Marco Polo on Netflix. You can say, okay, let's watch episode 4 this weekend and we'll talk about it next class. Teaching with songs and poetry. My students love this. So periodically, every couple of months, I guess, we'll have a music class. And I like to do them sparingly as a treat or reward. So let's say that we have had a couple of tougher classes tackling a harder subject like modal verbs, can, could, would, may, should, those things. That's a tough topic. So I say, okay, hey, Fernanda, you've really stuck with it, and we got through the modal verbs lessons. How about we do a song class next week? Every student loves this. So typically in an hour class, you can listen to and dissect about 4 songs. So I say, you choose 2 songs, I choose 2 songs. You can have themes, you can do oldies, you can do, songs by U2 or REM or what have you. And what we'll do in the class then is we'll listen to a song together, and then I'll ask the student, how much did you get from there? What's the song about generally? And typically student does not get much. Even if she suggested this song is one she wants to listen to, she may not be able to tell you much about it. So I said, okay, great. Let's go over and look at the lyrics. There's a nice website, AZ Lyrics. Then we'll go through line by line, look at the lyrics. I'll explain things. Sometimes she'll have a different interpretation, which is fine. I mean, that's what songs, poetry are about, right? Not everybody interprets things the same way. it's real good discussion, and the students walk away just really having a new appreciation for the song, and they just love music classes. So I encourage you to do those once in a while. Teaching writing and teaching with writing. So teaching writing, I already mentioned that I have a couple of students who have to do emails in their jobs, so I help them with improving those, improving their writing. You can also teach with writing, by which I mean, let's say you have an advanced student. Like I had one, Gabi, who was quite advanced, just spoke really well, great accent. But I thought, what can I do to, keep things moving along, to keep her progressing? And so I suggested introducing writing some short essays each week. And we did that. And that was good because, as good as her English was, the essays had a way of ferreting out the little fine points where she still needed work. And so writing can be good for that. It's kind of a capstone skill for most students. So it's something to think about. Stories and literature, not appropriate for all students, but if you, excuse me, let me hop back up here. But if you have a pretty advanced student, then this is something that you might want to do. I don't think I've had a student yet that has done this. I've suggested it to several. What would you think about reading some short stories, or maybe tackling a novel? I typically will start with shorter pieces like short stories. But I've never had a student who did that, and they like it. Now, frankly, most students are studying English for more practical or utilitarian reasons, frequently their jobs, and that's fine. But I think it's really nice to read a short story with a student and see them enjoy using their English for something that's not work related, for something that's just fun, enjoying English for what it is. You can move on after short stories to novellas, novels, perhaps. You have to be careful because this is going to be a challenge for most students. But you could find shorter novels such as Animal Farm, for example, or Lost Horizon, or you could find perhaps young adult abridged versions of novels, and that's something that might work. So you don't want to select anything that's too difficult, too challenging, but I think if you are careful about the level, you'll find that your students really enjoy reading literature with you. And then counseling and advice. You kind of have to let your heart and your comfort level be your guide here. But I think the longer that you teach, the more you should expect that students are going to come to you asking for advice. And sometimes it's more directly related to the classes, like, I want to do an immersion program abroad. Can you help me select one? There's this one in Toronto. There's this one in Cambridge, Mass. Which one looks better to you? Something like that. Obviously, you want to stay away from things like relationship issues or, finance. I don't give financial advice and so on. But students sometimes want to talk about things like their jobs, and how, work situation, and maybe they're looking for a new job. And, you might, if you feel comfortable, give some general advice, but you'll have to make that decision. Just recognize that when a student comes to you and asks for advice, she's paying you a compliment. And so that's really kind of the end of the teaching sections, but there's one final section here on administration. This is a job, and there's pretty much administration on just about any job, I think. So we'll revisit policies here. Some of this repeats, but I've tried to put everything about admin together in one section for easier reference. So we'll talk about policies, accepting payments, and I need to update that section because there's just new stuff all the time. And so I'll need to keep that updated. Taxes. Lots of people have been credited with this, but only two things are certain: death and taxes. You can't escape taxes, and I encourage you to escrow a bit there. But also do talk to a CPA, because you may find that there are things that you can deduct and help you reduce your tax burden. And then I talk about some things that I like to do when I sign up a new student. You have to create a folder, for the student on your computer, but I also like, for example, to add the student to my distribution list that I keep for all of my current students. So things like that. Just it's easier to be organized on the front end than to try and do it later, right? So that's the course, all the digital material. Each one of these, by the way, is a video, typically a slideshow, Canvas slideshow with me up in the corner. You can also download the audio separately if you want to reinforce it, if you want to listen to it in your car or sit out on your deck with a glass of Chardonnay and listen to it again. You can print out the slides 3-up and make notes next to the slide if that helps you to remember. There's everything that you need here. I think you have to admit that the course is pretty soup to nuts. If I have missed anything, please put some comments below and I'll be happy to add additional lessons. So let's move ahead here. So what's included, I just talked about this, but there also, I've recorded a lot of video excerpts from actual classes, over the shoulder kinds of excerpts here, so that you will have examples, models of a grammar class, a class where the student's reading an article, a song class, okay? So you can see what these actually look like to demystify things. And then I have already recording an actual assessment chat there that you can look at, so you can see how I conduct one, how you might want to conduct one. All materials are available for 24 months, and people sometimes ask, well, why is there a time limit? There are legal complications with saying you have access for life, you know, but also let's be honest, if you can't go through the course and find your first students, get up and running within 2 years, you're probably not going to. Now, that's all the digital materials. Now, it's your choice, but if you would like additional support, let's say you've never taught anything before, or you just want to get up and running faster, you can get the digital materials with additional support, which include one-on-one coaching sessions with me, and you decide when you want to exercise those. So typically, students want them when they're dealing with tech stuff or trying to finalize their niche, or they want help developing their marketing plan. Those are typical points, but you get to use these whenever you think you need them. You'll also get access to a closed Facebook group where you can post questions, network with folks like yourself, maybe find an accountability buddy. You'll also get access to regular Q&A calls, which are like office hours. Some of them may be around a specific topic, or some of them may just be fielding whatever calls you have, whatever questions you have. And I can also help you set up an actual class so you can kind of see what that's like. And what I'm talking about here is I'll find a student and match you up for one class. I cannot promise you that the student will stay with you, because students like to choose their own teachers. But what I'm talking about here is organizing a class with the student that I've found. I'll indicate a material for you. I'll select a material, teach that to the student. If you'll record that class, I'll review it and give you some pointers, right? So this is kind of like what an education major in university would do for student teaching. And then I'll give you a certificate after completion of course materials and student teaching, so you can show this to prospective students in the future, all right? I think you have to agree that, again, it's a pretty soup to nuts course. And I know that you may have never thought of yourself as an English teacher, but if you're a native speaker or even near native, going through this course with my support, you can be successful. I firmly believe that. If you've come this far, I know that you're sincerely interested. So I want you to really think about this. And also, if you're still not sure, compare this to your options out there. Forget those apron jobs. I want to talk to those of you here who are in retirement or nearing retirement, and you want to augment your retirement income, because that's a large portion of the people who buy my course. If you've looked around out there, you know that there are lots of part-time jobs out there, probably where you live, and they all suck, right? So by contrast, I think that teaching English online, even if you have never thought of yourself as an English teacher, really stacks up pretty well. Throw away the apron, throw away the broom, and fire up your computer. All right, so here's a little bit more about me, a bio. You can find more about me clicking these links. There's another testimonial from Kathleen. She's a lovely person. Some frequently asked questions. Again, if I haven't included something in here you think should be included, tell me, I'll add it. There's another testimonial from Peter, a favorite quote of mine from a favorite author of mine, Mark Twain, who said, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. And I think that that's very true, very pithy. Now let's get into the numbers, the cost, remembering that your purchase may well be tax deductible. Talk to your CPA. Okay, so get started now. So the full plan, which would be, let's click up here. So there you see the enroll button here. If you want one of these other plans, you just click on that button and it'll move the enroll down. All right, full plan. This is all the digital stuff that we've been going through here for the better part of an hour. And also all of the coaching and all that other support. And this is a one-time payment of $697. Now that's US dollars. So if you are in Canada or UK, you click enroll, it's going to convert to your currency, right? Now, one thing that I've changed though is that I will pay the tax. If you're from the US, as I am, we're used to the price quoted not being the final price. Oh, they're going to add tax to it. I found that people from Canada really hated that. So I said, I understand. So I will pay the tax, whatever your local tax is, I will pay it. Now, of course, again, when you click enroll, it's going to convert like to Canadian dollars, but it's not going to add TST, GST on top. I eat that. I pay that. Okay. You may feel like, particularly, let's say you've done some teaching before, or you're a do-it-yourself kind of bootstrap person. You may say, you know what, I can do it. Give me the Facebook group and the digital stuff, and I'm good to go. Then you could purchase the course for $397, and again, that's a one-time payment. If it's still a little bit of a bite for you, you can have either the full plan or the do-it-yourself plan distributed over 3 payments. Okay, so I've really tried to make this course accessible to anybody who's sincerely interested in doing it. And I hope that at this point you're still motivated and you want to do this. I understand you may not be ready to click the button yet, in which case I just say, you know, bookmark the URL that you're on right now and come back and look at it, you know, stew on it a little bit. But I really do help you sign up because I think this is the best side gig going. I really do. Besides the money, it's so rewarding. I love my students. I pick my students and they stay with me and I watch them progress. And I just love this. And if you do sign up with me and you get the coaching package in there, I promise you, I'll be there with you every step of the way. I'll back you on this. You know, selfishly, I want to see you be successful for you and for your future students, but also for me. I want a good testimonial out of you, right? Because it's hard to sell courses online when people don't really know you, and I want a good testimonial from you. I really would like to see you sign up, but think about it, and when you're ready, click that button. All right. Even if you decide not to enroll in my course, I do wish you the very best in all of your future endeavors.